Good afternoon, bonsoir, buenas tardes, buonasera. Welcome to this event of the series, The Romance as Shared European Cultural Heritage, a program with which we want to celebrate the cultural links of our European countries. This project is a joint initiative of the Società Dante Alighieri, represented today by this director, Manuela Costanzo, and Mr. Angelo Farnetano. The Instituto Cervantes of Leeds and Manchester, which is represented as by myself as director, and with the support of my colleagues Carlos Pulpillo and Ernesto Gomez. And the Alianza Française of Manchester, represented by its director Xavier Labrie and Aurélie Plumeler. Thanks to all of you for making it possible, and also a special thank to the speakers. Thank you to all of you for making it possible, and also a special thanks to the speakers, Simon Elliott and Marco Vasile, who generously accepted our invitation. The Roman civilization was one of the most advanced in history in all aspects, and left a very rich legacy. In law, which was the basis of modern civil law, in architecture with infrastructures, which in some cases are still used 2,000 years later, and in language with Latin as the language from which a large part of European languages originated. This is just a few examples of our fascinating civilization, and that is why we thought it would be interesting to highlight our shared Roman heritage. We will do that through a journey to the Roman cities in 4 different European countries. Today we have Simon Elliott, who will talk about ancient London. We will explore Paestum, a Greek colony conquered by Rome, with Marco Vasile. And on the 12th of May, we will have the participation of José Alejandro Beltrán Caballero, who will talk about Tarraco in Spain. Also, Viviane Barrière, who will talk about Autun and Nîmes in France. During the lectures, you can write your questions in the chat box, and a member of our team will pass them to the lecture after its presentations. Actually, we will have 15 minutes for the question and answers after presentation. Also, the lectures will be recorded and will be available in our YouTube channel of each institution. Angelo Farnetano will introduce Marco Vasile, and now I give the floor to the director of Alianza Française, Xavier Labrie, who will introduce our first speaker, Simon Elliott. I hope you will enjoy the conference. Welcome, everybody. Thank you very much. Muchas gracias. Merci beaucoup. Muchas gracias.
Muchas gracias, Pedro. Buenas tardes, buonasera, bonsoir à tout le monde. So I'm very honored to have to introduce Dr. Simon Elliott, a historian, an archaeologist, an author, and a broadcaster. I hope I don't forget anything, Simon. So some of you might know Simon as he appears in the Great British Dig on Channel 4, in Walking Britain's Roman Roads on 5 Select, and on History Hit TV. Simon's studies include a master's degree in war studies from King's College, a master's degree in archaeology from University College, and in 2017, Simon completed his PhD at the University of Kent in archaeology, focusing on the military presence in Britain during the Roman occupation, with a particular focus on the Classis Britannica regional fleet. He's now an honorary research fellow at the University of Kent. Simon also wrote several award-winning books and bestsellers that you can find online on his website or at your nearest bookstore, among which Sea Eagles of Empire, the Classis Britannica and the Battles for Britain, which was published in 2016, and more recently in March 2021, I think it's your latest, Simon, you published Roman Britain's Missing Legion, What Really Happened to 9 Hispana. So We are delighted to have Simon tonight, and we can't wait to listen to what he's going to say about the building of Britain's Roman occupation capital, London. So without further ado, I leave the floor to Simon. Gracias.
My pleasure. Xavier, can you do my public relations, please? That was fantastic.
Okay, I'll do that as soon as I have finished tonight, yes.
Very good. Okay, what I'm going to do, I'm going to screen share now. So if someone can just stay online just to make sure they can see my screen. So I'm going to multiple participants. Good evening, everybody. My name is Dr. Simon Elliott. Thank you so much. I'm honored to be talking to such a fantastic group of people tonight with such an amazing organization, which to me truly reflects the amazing cosmopolitan nature of the Roman Empire, stretching all the way from the east with the borders with Parthia, or later Sasanian Persia, through to North Africa, through to the Rhine and Danube frontier. But today I'm going to bring you all the way to what I will call the Wild West of the Roman Empire, the northwest of the Roman Empire. To Britain, which was latterly the provincial and later diocesan capital of Britain, with London. So could somebody who's got the mic on, please turn the mic off, please? Thank you very much. So I'll talk for about 45 minutes and then take questions. And the presentation tonight is going to be talking about how London was built. So many people can talk about Roman London itself, including me, but my PhD actually identified where the stone came from to build Roman London and how it was built. And that's the story I'm going to tell you tonight. So here on the left, my presentations are nearly all very picture heavy, with me talking to pictures. So it really lends itself to Zoom presentations. So here you have on the left here an image of the Severan land wall in Roman London. You see that beautifully sort of worked pieces of ragstone there. So most of Roman London was built from a limestone called ragstone, which came from the Medway Valley, which is a river which runs through the middle of Kent, which is in the southeast of Britain, as many people will know. And I know we have an international audience tonight, so I'll try and make sure I explain the geographic areas I'm talking about as well. This indeed is the River Medway, and my villa I'm excavating, where I'm the director at Teeson's here on the right hand side. What is not to like? That is a beautiful location for a villa. And here we have a very famous image of a Roman ship called the Blackfriars One vessel, which is the typical kind of ship which carried this stone on the left hand side here through to build Roman London. This ship foundered and was excavated, and in its hull, when it was excavated, it indeed had 26 tons of this ragstone, this limestone, which was ready to build Roman London, but which sadly sank, so wasn't used. So tonight I'm going to talk about the research, the region, and then I'm going to go into the detail about where the stone was used in London and what for. I'll talk about where the exact quarries the stone came from, who quarried it, so this industry which quarried the stone which built Roman London, talk about the journey this stone took to Roman London, what happened to the industry afterwards, and then tell you about the conclusions and next steps. And I can tell you now that this will be the first talk I've given, which will be the one I will reveal, where there is a new Roman villa site and a new ragstone quarry, which adds to the 5 we already know. So this will be the first time I've publicly spoken about this absolutely brand new site, and I'll show you images of that at the end. Here you can see a Roman road which links one of my quarries to the River Medway, this river in the middle of Kent, where the stone was then put on the river to go to build Roman London. Here you can see a Roman milestone along this length of road. This is a Romano-Celtic temple, which is in one of the villa sites in the Medway Valley, this river in the middle of Kent. The villas in the Medway Valley, this river in the middle of Kent, were all associated with the elites, almost certainly military, as you will see, who managed this quarrying industry, this metalla, which quarried the stone, transported the stone, and then built Roman London. So I usually begin my presentations on Roman Britain by sort of giving a few top line thoughts. So to my mind, Britain at the northwest of the Roman Empire was the Wild West of the empire. You're a long way from Rome. You have an unconquered far north, never conquered, even though Agricola and Septimius Severus tried to conquer it. In great force, they ultimately failed. So therefore, you tend to have a very large military presence in Britain, probably 12% of the whole military establishment of the Roman Empire, and what is only 4% of the geographic area of the Roman Empire at the time of Trajan, which means that there's a very large military presence. You're a long way from Rome, so there's always trouble in Britain, usually in the north, but later in the empire, of course, lots of usurpation attempts. The most successful one, of course, was Constantine the Great. So Britain is a place of difference. And also there's a division in Britain between the north and the west and the south and the east, even within the single original province, because the north and the west, given this very big military presence in the north, was a military frontier zone where the economy, to my mind, was bent towards maintaining the Roman military, whereas the south and the east, even though it's all part of one province, the south and the east was usually a full fat functioning part of the Roman Empire, where the wealth created went into the imperial fiscus treasury for the emperor. But the north and the west was very different. So Britain, within the Roman Empire, is always, to my mind, a place of difference. So the key findings I'm going to talk about today are going to be the fact that this river in the middle, I'll show you maps in a minute. So this river in the middle of Kent, running north to south broadly, dividing Kent in half, the River Medway, is where the quarries were, which quarried the stone which built Roman London, which is a very long journey, as you'll see. The villas in this valley were associated with the ragstone quarrying, and the river itself, the River Medway, was controlled with a series of weirs and locks to enable it to be canalized to allow the stone to be transported. So the picture that I'm beginning to paint here is one of a very big industrial enterprise, all geared towards building Roman London. And again, I promise I'll talk a little bit about the history of Roman London as I progress. Firstly, a little slide about the geology though. The ragstone, this limestone, sits within this formation here, which is called the Low Greensand Formation, which is sandstones and limestones, which were laid down in prehistoric seas around the time of Jurassic Park, in actual fact. And the ragstone itself actually is quarryable, so it's exposed in 3 areas: around Dover in Folkestone, here in Maidstone, and around here in Sevenoaks in Kent. This, to the international audience who don't know Britain as well as the national audience, is Kent. London is here. The River Medway I'm talking about is here. The only area where ragstone is exposed, which is the type which was used in London, is the type here in Maidstone. So this is exactly where the stone came from, which built Roman London. First point you can see on this map is how far away it is from London, which is a point I'll bring out later, because the stone around London for building things is not particularly good. Lots of sands and clays. So you go to the nearest place where the Romans knew, even before the Claudian invasion, the stone was good for quarrying, and that's around here in Maidstone. And broadly, in Roman Kent, this is Kent again, the southeast of Britain, the Roman settlement tended to be on the line of Watling Street, which is the main road going from here, Richborough, which is where the Claudian invasion, I think, took place, along the north coast of north of the North Downs in Kent. So that's the line of the modern A2, up to London. Watling Street, by the way, is a major military trunk road in Roman Britain, going all the way to Wales. But for our presentation, it's this section here to the north of Kent we're interested in. And then you have Roman settlement down the 3 key river valleys as well. The Stowers around Canterbury, the Canterbury being the Civitatis capital of Roman Kent, and then down the Medway Valley here, and then down the Darent Valley here. So Roman settlement in Kent is in along here in the north, along Watling Street, and then down the river valleys, Stour, Medway, Darent, okay? Here, the Weald is very clayey in terms of its soil. It's got lots of iron ore. And that's actually where the Romans manufacture most of their iron for the first 200 years of their occupation, so for the Principate period of the occupation. This was probably an imperial estate, in actual fact, managed by the Roman military for the emperor. So you have broadly in Kent 2 industries running in the Principate period. You have the ragstone quarrying in the Medway Valley to build Roman London, and you have the iron industry in the Weald, which manufactured the iron for the Roman military in the north. So there you go. That's a little taster of Roman Kent for you. So now we can move to Roman London. So let's have a little flavor here of this amazing city. So remember, with the Claudian invasion, London was not the original capital of the original province. I've got a mic on again. Can someone turn the mic off, please? Thank you very much. So here you have Roman London. So remember, the Principate, at the beginning of the Principate, the Claudian invasion, London was not the provincial capital, that was Colchester. So Claudius announced the province to exist after his victory was declared when he was here for 16 days, and that was in AD 43 in October in Colchester in Essex. And it's only after the Boudiccan revolt in AD 60-61 that London becomes the provincial capital. London is originally founded around AD 50. We don't know why it's called London. Maybe Londinium, maybe it references the Brythonic name for the River Thames. So the original native name for the River Thames, maybe it references a Brythonic or native name, but we don't know. But we do know the Romans called it Londinium. We know that because we have tablets where the wax is removed, but the back of the diptych tablets still has incised inscriptions with the address, and that is there's one that's dated to around AD 70, which says Londinium. It's the first time that London appears in writing, in actual fact. So this is Roman London. The image of London you're seeing here is the Severan image of London. We know that because you have the Severan land walls here, built at the end of the AD 190s by Severus, after he became the emperor in the year of the 5 emperors in AD 193, and then defeated the usurping British governor, Clodius Albinus, at the Battle of Lugdunum. But here, I can tell you the story of Roman London just on this map. It's a very basic map, but it's perfect for what we want to talk about. So the original Roman city, sort of established around AD 50, started here in the very center of the city of London, which is around somewhere called Cornhill, the highest ground overlooking the Thames, and it was a mercantile settlement. London gradually developed into an emporium or a place of mercantile activity, what the Romans would have called a municipium. And all the posh buildings of Roman London are based around this early city on Cornhill. So the Basilica and Forum is here, where modern Leadenhall Market is. The Governor's Palace here is beneath modern Cannon Street railway station. And all the temples, all the fine public buildings that would have been here in this area, which is to the east of a stream which bisected Roman London and was very visible then, though not now, called the Walbrook. It's only when it began to expand did it jump across the Walbrook, visible then but not now, onto the western side, so towards the area of St. Paul's today, which we call Ludgate Hill. That's where you get all the hoi polloi, the lower classes living. That's where you get the Cripplegate vexillation fort. That's where you get the amphitheatre. That's where you get the various public baths and religious precincts. So you get the Temple of Mithras, all on the wrong side of the Walbrook, all because that's where it jumped to the where the lower classes moved to as the city expanded. For us, though, the important thing of this image is all these buildings you can see in front of you in this very basic image were built from Kentish ragstone, which was excavated from within about 2 miles of where I'm talking to you from now in the Medway Valley, transported a vast distance to Roman London, and all came from the Medway Valley. That's the Basilica and the Forum, the Governor's Palace, that's the bathhouses, that's the religious precincts. Excuse me, that's the amphitheatre in its second iteration, that's the Cripplegate Fort, that's the bridge piers of London Bridge. That is indeed the Severan land walls as well, all built from the same stone, which came this huge distance. And here's a nicer image, just to give you a real flavour with a bird's eye view, a drone's view for us today, of course, as archaeologists and historians today, what Roman London would have looked like around AD 210, 208, 210, when Severus was in Britain. And again, here's the Basilica and Forum, here's the Governor's Palace, there's London Bridge, here's the Severan land wall, there's the Cripplegate Fort, the vexillation fort, here is the amphitheatre. So that is Roman London, okay, around AD 200. So what I want to do, I'm going to take all of these individual examples and I'm going to just show you where the ragstone went to build them. And I'm going to give you a sense of the scale of the industry which went to build Roman London. So we'll start with the Severan land walls, this land wall circuit here, built by Severus about AD 199. So to build that wall, just imagine this being extracted in quarries in the Medway Valley a long way away and then transported. Would have taken 35,000 cubic meters of ragstone to build that wall, the land wall, comprising over 1 million squared and very well dressed ragstone blocks. That's 45,000 tons of ragstone for the facing alone, which would have taken 1,750 voyages by a medium-sized merchant ship from the Medway Valley, where I'm talking to you from today. And I know some people are listening today from there as well. I know my friends, John and Brenda, are listening. And that would have taken 750,000 man hours needed to construct, let us remember, just the wall. So this is a vast industrial enterprise, which clearly has been operated by the Roman state to build Roman London. I would add as well, it's being used to build the whole urban environment in the southeast, but Roman London is significantly bigger than anywhere else in the southeast. Here you can see the wall being constructed. Here are the Blackfriars one merchant vessels as they're styled, transporting the stone. Here you can see you've got some of the buildings, the Aurora, the warehouses on the riverfront. This is Roman London being built from ragstone from the Upper Medway Valley. Here you have Aldersgate, which is the eastern gate of Roman London in the Severn Land Wall. That's built from Kentish ragstone. And crucially here, to reflect a point I'm going to come right back to at the end of the presentation, the land wall in Roman London was built by Severus. The river wall was not finished until the time of the usurper Carausius and his successor and murderer, Electus, 100 years later. Now, the river wall is not built from beautifully worked pieces of Kentish ragstone. It's built from smashed up pieces of mausolea and public buildings, which were destroyed by the usurpers to quickly build this river wall to actually finish the circuit in Roman London, but it's built in a very different way. And that's because the quarrying industry itself, as I'll prove at the end of my presentation, finished in the middle of the crisis of the 3rd century, in the middle of the 3rd century, and therefore there was no stone to be extracted to build the river wall 50 years later. So that's one of the key tells that gives us an indication that the construction process of London differs from the beginning of the 3rd century to the end of the 3rd century. Here you can see the scale of the Basilica and Forum. This was huge, actually. It was monumentalized after the Boudiccan revolt. It's very, very Roman style of building to say, we're here to stay. We've defeated Boudica. You've not kicked us out of this far-flung province at the northwest of the empire, the wild west of the Roman Empire. We're going to stay. And therefore, we're going to build this massive Basilica and Forum, which is coated in white plaster, visible for miles around as you approach Roman London. It's the largest stone-built structure north of the Alps in the Roman Empire, okay? That is because the Romans wanted to state that they were here to stay after the Boudiccan revolt had been defeated. Here you can see the beautiful Governor's Palace, which is beneath Cannon Street railway station. For anybody who goes to London, if you go to the City, which is the eastern part of London, so the opposite side of London to the West End, and you go to a place called Leadenhall Market, it's very old-fashioned. It's where a lot of the Harry Potter films are filmed, a lot of very old-fashioned shops. There's one barber shop there, a hairdresser, and if you knock on the hairdresser's door and ask him to go in, say, can I see the Basilica of Roman London? That section there is actually in the barber's basement. You can go and see part of the Basilica of Roman London beneath the hairdressers today, or maybe next week when you're allowed to. There's the amphitheatre, which is beneath the modern Guildhall Library to the northwest of the City of London, built from Kentish ragstone. There's the ragstone there in its presentation today. There's the Mithraeum, built from Kentish ragstone. Townhouses, great and small, built from Kentish ragstone. So Roman London's built from this stone. This is my favourite slide in the whole deck, which only an archaeologist would say, wouldn't they? Because it shows you the scale of this industry. So the red pins are the exact quarries which I identified for the first time in my PhD thesis, where the stone came from to build Roman London. There's Roman London. There are the ragstone quarries. This is the River Medway. Remember, you've got the Stowers over here, the Darenth over here, the Medway here, bisecting Kent today, let alone Roman Kent, in half. This is the key number here, though. This stone was of such good quality that the Romans were prepared to transport it 127 kilometers by river and sea each way. And it's a 2-day journey each way, so overall a 4-day journey. So this is a huge undertaking, and clearly it's state-run, given the scale required for these millions of pieces of stone to build Roman London. So the stone's extracted here, in some way, shape, or form, put on the river, goes above the tidal reach here into the tidal section of the river, gets to around here on the Hoo Peninsula. There's an overnight stay. Then you go down all the way to Roman London. You off-road your stone. This being the Romans, of course, they had a very sophisticated economic system. The boats would not go back empty. The boats would go back full of all the produce which you would get from this Emporia, Roman London. So this would include amphora of garum fish sauce from Spain, cosmopolitan Romans, remember. This is wine from Gaul and from Germany. This is olive oil from the Eastern Mediterranean and from North Africa. This is Samian ware from Southern Gaul, all coming into Roman London, all broken down into smaller loads, then all getting put back into these barges and these boats, being transported back down the Thames estuary through to the River Medway, and then back upriver, back to where the ragstone quarries and the villas. And these boats would stop at all the various places on the way, selling their wares to all the villas and all the settlements as well. This is a very sophisticated Roman economic model. So it's hard-edged with the ragstone going that way to build the city, and then softer edged with the wares to sell to villas, to settlements, to non-villa settlements, to towns, small and large, and back to the villas in the Medway Valley on the way back. This is from my PhD thesis. So again, that section is this here. There you can see the River Medway. There's Rochester, which is the second town of Roman Kent. The first one, of course, as I mentioned, being Canterbury. All of these triangles here, they are villas. All of the quarries are indicated here by the white circle with the crossed pickaxes on them. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 there, and there's one over here as well. What I want you to do, I want you to try and remember something for me, all right? Could you remember that gap? So this is the Medway Valley, where the stone came from to build Roman London. This is the Darenth Valley, which also had Roman settlement, but the villas there tended to be for the fine living of the rich from Roman London because it was much closer to London. And in between, you have this small group of quarries here, villas here, in a place called Plaxtall, between the two river valleys. Okay, that's probably aligned with the Darenth Valley up here, so nothing to do with this. But remember the gap. Can you remember the gap for me? Because I'm going to show you something which hopefully will entertain you later. Now, the key town today in Kent, in central Kent, is Maidstone here. Roman Maidstone looked like this. It wasn't a town at all. This is a Google Earth image of the modern town of Roman Maidstone in the middle of Kent. This is the River Medway, which transported all the stone to build Roman London. Here you can see the villas. So Roman Maidstone was not a town, it was a sequence of villas. Every one of those villas was associated through to the middle of the crisis of the 3rd century, the middle of the 3rd century, with the quarries, these enormous holes in the ground, which extracted the stone to build Roman London. So I'm going to now tell you exactly where these quarries were. Now, the methodology I used to identify them was as follows. I can remember going to a lecture about 20 years ago when I first moved to the Medway Valley, and I was told it was about it's about Roman Maidstone, and I was told that, of course, everybody knows that the ragstone which built Roman London came from around Maidstone. And I put my hand up and I said, "Could you tell us where the quarries were?" And I got told it's not important. And obviously, a very British phrase, it was a red rag to a bull for me. So I decided to actually make an academic career out of finding these big holes in the ground. I've got very unique taste as an archaeologist, and I found them in my PhD research. To do that, I went back to very early 18th century maps, which are the best quality early maps you can find for the whole of Kent. I knew where the quarries would be because we know where the exposed ragstone is. I then looked for big holes in the ground on these 18th century maps, which could only be quarries, but which at that time were overgrown and extinct. So these are massive holes in the ground, former quarries, which by the 18th century were extinct. I found 8, and of those I narrowed 5 down to be my 5 candidates. I then went into the holes in the ground and found evidence of Roman quarrying. I then looked at the archaeological record around the holes in the ground to find evidence of Roman settlement associated with industry. And that is how I found my 5 Roman quarries. So Roman London was built from these 5 holes in the ground. The first one is at Allington. So Allington is that one. And look at the number here. I can't give you the area of the quarry because of hill wash in the quarries in the modern era, but I can give you I can't give you the volume. I can give you the area. So look at the size of the area of this hole in the ground. This is Allington. There you have the extinct quarry in the 18th century. There it is today. The red dots are a villa, a cemetery, and an industrial site. And the industrial site was to do with ironworking to make tools for the quarry. And that had a Roman coin hoard dated to the Gallic Empire in the AD 260s. It had coins, for example, of Tetricus II. Then we move on to another one, Borton on Chelsea, which is here. Again, you can see the same pattern developing. 18th century. This one is so extinct in the 18th century, actually got a housing estate in the bottom of it in the 18th century. You can see here the quarrying shells exposed. And you can see here this today. So here is Borton on Chelsea, the quarry with an even bigger estate in the bottom of it. And here you can see all the various Roman settlements around it. There's a remote bathhouse there, which would have been what we call in Britain a sort of a pit head baths, where the workers, the skilled workers, only the 1/5 were skilled, 4/5 were unskilled. Talk about those in a minute. The 1/5 who were skilled workers, they'd go to this bathhouse at the end of the day to have a cup of wine, have a bath, and talk about their day's work. This is a Roman villa. That's a Roman settlement. There's a Roman villa. There's a Roman settlement. There's a Roman cemetery. This is the remote bathhouse. You can see here the remote Borton on Chelsea bathhouse. This is what the cemetery looked like when it was excavated. Moving on, we move on to the Dean Street quarry. Now, the Dean Street quarry is very important in actual fact, especially for any of my friends who are listening from Spain, because I'm going to challenge you, because I think I've found the largest man-made hole in the Roman Empire. 2.6 kilometers long this quarry is, running all the way from the River Medway all the way through to the high ground above Maidstone. Look at the area, the scale of this enormous quarry. It's this one here. It's called the Dean Street quarry. I think that's bigger than any of even the Metalla quarries in Roman Spain. And it's associated with another quarry, which is slightly to the west here, called Quarry Wood. Show you a map in a minute to get your eye on where these are. You can see here there is a Roman road called Heathrow today, which links them together. And this is it. So for your geographic reference, Maidstone is here. London is a long way that way. So this is the Upper Medway Valley. And you can see here the scale of the Dean Street quarry, 2.6 kilometers long. You might think that quarry looks very narrow at the top here, but I'll show you in a minute it's not. You can also see here this crop mark going down the middle of the quarry. We're actually doing some geophysical work there at the moment. We think that might be a canal actually excavated through the middle of the quarry, such as its scale, to allow the stone to be transported more easily through bespoke locks and weirs down to the River Medway, but we'll know more about that next year. See here these dark patches on the open ground. They're ash pits from Roman ironworking sites, smaller ones than in the Weald. This is where the Romans were manufacturing and maintaining tools for their quarries. You can see here, this is the other quarry I spoke about, the one at Vasile. This is the Roman road linking it to the Dean Street quarry. This is a Roman road I showed you at the very beginning of the presentation with the milestone. That's the Roman cemetery I'll talk about later. That's where the milestone was. That's where I live, or until very recently lived there. That is in East Farley in Kent. There's a Roman bridge. So this is a big industrial operation taking place in the Upper Medway Valley, all geared towards building Roman London. And in fact, when I appeared on a couple of my television programs, I actually begin by saying the story of Roman London begins almost 130 kilometers away in the Upper Medway Valley. This is this section right at the top of this quarry. So here you can see the scale. These are the ziggurat shapes here of the quarry terraces. So at the very top, you can see it's an enormous quarry. I almost broke my back augering the bottom of the quarry. It goes back more than 2 meters with modern hill wash before you get to the actual quarry floor. It's an enormous quarry. And you can see here some of the marks from Roman flat-headed chisels that you can find in some of the exposed stonework as well in the Dean Street quarry. And a lot of the stone, in actual facts, from the quarry was not only used in London, it was used to build the local built environment. So this place here I mentioned, East Farley, that is the Roman villa. next to the quarry where the elites lived who ran the quarry, and that is the excavated Roman villa today. That's where we have the Romano-Celtic bathhouse, incidentally. So it's a very elite villa. And a lot of the stone from the villa is, of course, being reused in the local modern environment here as part of the Saxon tower in the local church, St. Mary's. So this is the tufa, which came from the bathhouse of the Roman villa at East Farley, where the elites lived, who managed the Roman quarry, which provided the stone, which built Roman London. Cause and continuity writ large. And here we can see, remember that gap, that's the entrance to the Romano-Celtic temple. Here we can see the reused tufa arch from the Romano-Celtic temple at the East Farley Villa, reused in a local church. The same tufa, the same distance, reused when the Saxons, in probably about AD 800, first came back into the upper Medway Valley and started building their churches. And here we can see some of the small finds, etc., coming from this particular site at East Farley, which ran this Dean Street quarry. Most importantly for us today, I want to talk about this curse scroll. Curse scroll was found there against this Romano-Celtic temple's eastern wall, had 14 names on it, dating to around AD 150. 7 of them were in Latin, 7 of them were in native Brythonic. And here you get a snapshot of how the Roman Empire actually ran itself. I always think it ran its provinces with a very light touch, providing that the individual acknowledged that the emperor and the imperial cult and pay their taxes. But apart from that, they were allowed to get on with their lives if they paid their taxes. And here you can see it in reality with my curse scroll from Roman Kent, dated to AD 150. 7 individuals specifically styling themselves as being Roman with a Latin name. 7 of them very happily getting on with their lives in Roman Britain, styling themselves with a non-Roman Brythonic name. And here you can see some of the other small finds. This is my lovely wife Sarah. This is the rim from a Roman cremation burial. You can see the size here. Here is some of the reused iron tap slag from one of the ironworking sites near a quarry, which built Roman London. And here is another image of the milestone. And finally, the villa where I actually excavate, which is at Paestum in the upper Medway Valley. This is the furthest upriver, so the furthest west and south we go on the River Medway before we hit the Weald. And then you hit the Weald to the south, and you have effectively, you can imagine, barbed wire over the river, because then you enter the ironworking industry, which is run by the military as an imperial estate. So this is the furthest upriver of the villas in the Medway Valley, with a quarry which helped to build Roman London at Paestum, which I excavate. And there is the quarry today. This is the region with all the Roman associated finds from the historic environment record. The grouping here is the villa. These are the burials and cemeteries associated with the villa, obviously away from the living in the pre-Christian era. And then here we move towards where the quarry itself is. Let's have a look at some of the pictures of the excavation. Here we can see us digging 4 years ago. You can see how substantial the south wall of the main range of the villa was. Built in a very odd place because in bad weather, you get lots of spring lines coming out. So they ended up having to build buttresses there. This line here is this apsidal from the bathhouse, and that filled up within about 2 hours of actually excavating it from a still existing spring. Here you can see a hypercourse, so you have a very elite residence. There's a beautiful silver alloy disc brooch, which is one of the best small finds we found. All the people living here would have been making their money from quarrying and transporting the stone, which made Roman London. And that's what the villa would have looked like. So this is the Medway Valley. Roman London is way down here somewhere. There is a beautiful wing corridor villa. There's the pavilions on either side. There's my bathhouse. That is the villa we envisaged the Romans lived in, who quarried the stone, which built Roman London from Paestum. Who quarried the stone? So I want to be talking for about another 5 to 10 minutes, and then I'll take questions. Remember, I've got a reveal for you at the end as well, so stay tuned for the reveal the first time. So who quarried the stone? So in the Roman province, the Roman province would have been run by 2 chains of command. The governor, who was the legal and the military representative of the emperor, and then you had the procurator, who's the chancellor, the financial person. And the chancellor the procurator in a given province would appoint a deputy to run the metalla, the extractive industries of large scale. So this would have been a procurator metallorum, this deputy. And I think in Roman Kent, you had a single individual, probably based in Rochester on the north coast of Kent, who ran both the ragstone quarrying, which built Roman London in the Medway Valley, and also the iron industry in the Weald. I think it's the same individual. And then below that, I think it was probably the Roman military who ran both of these metalla enterprises, which built Roman London. Probably the Classis Britannica, the navy in Roman Britain, given analogously, you have very similar activities for navies elsewhere in the empire. For example, the Classis Germanica on the Rhine and in the Rhine Delta. Below that, 1/5 of the workers would have been skilled workers who would have come from all over the Roman Empire, it being so cosmopolitan, maybe from Campania, maybe from North Africa, maybe from Syria or Greece or from Spain or Gaul, because a skilled stoneworker was very well paid and very looked after, had a very good upper end middle class salary. And these are the individuals that would have lived fine lifestyles comparatively. But then you have the 4/5 of the workers who are not well paid. These are the unskilled workers who could come from the very bottom of Roman society, who lived a terrible life. Think of Spartacus, the Thracian slave. At the beginning of Spartacus, you find him working as a Thracian slave in a Roman quarry, having a terrible existence. So to be an unskilled worker in a Roman quarry, you would have been a slave, you would have been a criminal. Remember, in the Roman Empire, there is a punishment which is called condemned to work in the metalla. And the bit that's missing is to condemn to work in the metalla to death. If you go in that hole, you don't come out. So if you're an unskilled worker in a Roman metalla enterprise, it's always worth remembering this when we think of the fine quality buildings, the public buildings in Roman London. Think of the cost in humanity to build them. And let's have a look at some of the tools. This is, my wife is very tolerant of me. So when I go on holiday, I tend to go to museums and take holiday snaps for my presentations. For your delectation, and here we can see a previous holiday in Cyprus. This is the National Museum in Nicosia. These are Roman quarrying tools. The most common Roman quarrying chisel, this one here, even though it's curved, it's actually called a flat-bladed chisel, okay? And just to get your eye on what it would have been like to be an unskilled worker in a Roman quarry, this is Brazilian gold quarrying mining in the 19th century. So again, let's remember the human cost of this story. And how was the stone transported to London? Well, it was by the River Medway, by boat. The reason why it would have been transported by boat, this slide tells you it's far, 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 far cheaper to transport heavy goods, even today, certainly in the pre-modern era, by water. The cheapest is by sea, and then by river, and then by a huge factor, you go to roads and land. So it's always by sea. So the question here then is, the quarried stone is here, and it's all in the section of the River Medway. It's called the upper river. That means it's above the tidal reach, so there's no tide. So how do you get the stone on the river, given if you're in a non-tidal river, it's probably more like a big stream than a river, to the tidal part when the tide can do the hard work? Well, you do it by building canal, locks and weirs, so you canalize the river. And we know from poems like Ausonius's fabulous Mosella, he talks about the river, the Moselle in northwestern Germany and Gaul. He talks about a fabulous journey on the Moselle, and he describes how the Romans canalized the upper reaches of the Moselle. So what you're doing, you're removing any vegetation from 50 meters either side of the river. You're then covering it with sand, so you can use people towing, so like this with a codicaria. You could also, because the vegetation has been removed, use the sails as well, and you use people with rowing as well. And by hook or by crook, through the locks and the weirs, you get the stone to the tidal reach, and then it goes on its journey, and then it goes on its journey back when it's selling goods from Roman London. There's the route. Here you can see another villa, which is absolutely associated with this industry, and this is a very good image. Actually, you can see in this one image all the components that I've spoken about. This is actually the Mount Villa in Maidstone in central Kent on the River Medway, very famous villa in Roman Britain. You can see the substantial size. It's this big because of the amount of money people were making from this stone which built Roman London, this grey gold. This is beneath Maidstone East railway station today, but here you can see the elites living here in their wonderful wing corridor villa. Here you can see the transport vessels. Here's the ragstone from the quarries going onto the vessels. Here's the River Medway itself. And this is another view slightly further upriver, because I've actually found a potential Roman wreck. So I spoke at the beginning of the presentation about a Roman wreck we've excavated in Roman London, the Blackfriars 1 vessel. Well, around here, which is a place called Tovel. So on this map, bear with me, it's going to be around here. We found another Roman wreck in the river. We found ragstone actually in situ in the wreck. These are actual ragstone millstones, which were about to be transported before the wreck foundered. We found a wharf. These are some of the piles from the wharf. We found ship's timber. So next year we'll be filming a television program, probably for Discovery, I think. We're negotiating at the moment, about finding a Roman wreck, which would have built Roman London, but didn't because it foundered, but tells us an awful lot about Roman London and the economic model used to build Roman London. Here's some Royal Marines I convinced to very kindly do some diving on the wreck site when we were doing a reconnaissance. Here you can see one of the millstones itself. It's a blank, so it's half finished. The Romans half finished the stone in the quarry, then bespoke finish it actually in its place of use. Finally, here, before I tell you about my new site, so I'm going to run for 2 more minutes. What happened to this industry? Well, we know it disappeared in the middle of the 3rd century because the stone stops being used. My theory is, to cut to the chase, that in actual fact, the crisis of the 3rd century was so severe in Britain that the demand for the stone dried up for about a 50-year period. There are no more public buildings built in Roman London as an example after that. So the industry, the demand dried up. And also the Classis Britannica managing the industry disappeared as well because it was too expensive. So this is a double whammy. And then when Diocletian institutes to dominate from AD 284, drags the Roman Empire kicking and screaming back out of the crisis of the 3rd century. It's been too long that the industry has been out of use, so it's too late to re-establish it. So from that point, the built environment in the southeast of Britain is built from reused stone. So for example, our famous Saxon shore forts are largely built from reused stone from previous Roman forts or buildings, because the industry which provided the stone, the ragstone, has disappeared. The Medway Valley, where the stone came from to build Roman Britain, that's my old house is down here, became a Bacalian paradise because Britain then becomes an agrarian exporter to Gaul and to Germany, certainly in the 4th and into the 3rd, into the 4th century, certainly. And the industry transforms into agriculture. Many of these quarries are then forgotten about until my research. So my conclusion here from the research to date, before I tell you about my new site, ragstone was vital for the early development of Roman London. The quarries I've told you were all 5 specifically where all 5 are in the upper Medway Valley, which built Roman London. I've told you the kind of ships which carried the stone to Roman London. I've spoken about it being managed, both the metalla, extraction, and also the transport and the building in Roman London was by the military, in my view, the Classis Britannica. I've suggested it's the same individual working for the procurator who manages both the metalla, quarrying the ragstone, and the Wealden iron industry, providing the iron for the Roman military in the north, and it all disappears in the middle of the 3rd century. So next steps. Well, I've found, if you can you remember when I was talking about the Darent Valley to the west of Kent, and my river in the middle of Kent, the Medway, and this area in the middle between the two where there's a blank? Well, there's not now, because I found a villa, and that's my villa in a box for you just for this presentation. You can see the box flue tile here from the hypercourse. You can see very fine floor tiling. You can see tegular. You can see here recycled glass, which turns out in actual fact to be vitrified ceramic from a Roman iron kiln. You can see here there's a piece of Belgic rim pottery from an urn. which was cremation burial. You can see here there's an Eiffel stone mortaria. So the stone to make that mortaria came from central France. So here there's a villa in a box, and this is the villa which I've discovered, which is in the middle of these two river systems. And hey presto, oh, you can see here, there's some of the box flue tile. There's a curse scroll I found my own curse scroll. You're going to see a picture of a dog in a minute. It's my dog, my golden doodle, Hector the archaeological dog. Hector and I have been walking on this site now for 6 months, and recently we found this curse scroll. So the curse scroll is now being interpreted at Oxford University by the UK's leading expert. Here you can see the vitrified ceramic from the iron kiln lining. Some nice ceramic, some nice Samian ware there. And here's the gap. So this is the Medway Valley. London's here. This is the upper Medway Valley where the quarries were which built Roman London. These are the villas I spoke about in Plaxtall, which are aligned with the Dartmouth Valley here, where the posh people who lived in Roman London had their country houses. Well, my new site, I'm not going to tell you exactly where until I publish it, because there might be another PhD in it. It's here, right in between the two, and beautifully right on the join of the geology. So the brown here is the green sand, and there is a ragstone quarry, of course, and the soft brown are the Wealden clays where the iron ore. So in my site, my new one, I don't have just the ragstone quarrying in the upper Medway Valley. I don't have the iron industry from the Weald to the south. I've got both on the same site. So it could be a unique site. So stay tuned. There's Hector on it's on one of the ash heaps I spoke about earlier. There's the Hector the golden doodle, the archaeological dog. This is my new tour, if you don't mind me just mentioning it, with Hidden Histories, which is tracking the route of Boudica, which is going to be in August. So if anyone wants to take a screenshot, I'll go 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. That's my end screen. So if anybody wants to contact me, my contact details are on the screen here. Again, I'll leave that up for you for 10 seconds, just so anybody can take a screenshot. Please follow me on Twitter. I've got a very growing, lovely group of people follow me on Twitter, nearly 3,000 now. This is my website, Simon Elliott 20. That's my email address. I'm very happy for you to email me directly. Here are some of my books. Amazon #1 bestseller, Amazon #1 bestseller, Amazon #1 bestseller in the US, and soon to be a Hollywood film, the sequel to Gladiator. And on that bombshell, I'll stop my screen share. You've got about another 2 seconds to take a screenshot. Stop the share. Happy to take any questions, and thank you so much for being patient and listening. And actually, that's not bad, 45 minutes.
Well, thank you so much, Simon. That was amazing and so interesting. And some people have questions for you. So the first one is from Keith, who is asking what evidence is there that the Romans knew of the ragstone quarries before the Claudian invasion?
Oh, Keith, where are you from? Can you speak, Keith? No. Well, so Keith, it's a fantastic question, actually. We think, well, I know, I feel I know that the Romans were very well aware that the stone was there when they arrived in the Claudian invasion. In my view, basically, Caesar arrives 55-54 BC. And then in the intervening period, you get the 3 planned invasions by Augustus, you get the failed planned invasion by Caligula, and then Claudius in AD 43. In the intervening period from Caesar through to Claudius, I think the Romans case, what we call in Britain, they case the joint. They basically look across Britain to find out where the materials that they can make money from are, whether it's metals in the southwest, whether it's stone and metals in the southeast. And the key tell for me is that the first forum in Roman London is built in AD 50. We're pretty sure about that. So it's only 7 years after Claudius lands, or Aulus Plautius lands on the east coast of Kent. So within that 7 years, they've begun extracting stone from the upper Medway Valley in such quantities that they can build a forum with it, transporting the stone 127 kilometers. So therefore, they must have known the stone was there. And as they headed through Kent, conquering Kent and then establishing the province in the southeast, they then, to my mind, knew exactly where the materials were to extract. That also includes, incidentally, the iron in the Weald as well. They basically went straight for the extractive materials they knew. Great question. No pressure on the next question.
Well, Simon, amazing conference, and we have a few comments and questions as well. Jill Ingham comments that I'm loving this. I live in Kent, and I am a great map reader, interested in geology as well as Roman Britain.
Perfect.
Also, we have the question of Bunny Waring, and she said, is it possible that the 7 names of the course scroll from 150 of the Common Era are the same people that have both a Latin and a Breton name? Can you recall how the writing was laid out?
In 2 separate groups. So you have one group in Latin and one group in Brythonic. And from memory, intriguingly, Brythonic names were the ones at the top, not the bottom. Now, we all know how the Romans viewed recalcitrant natives, which was not very well. Okay, so therefore, again, this to my mind gives an indication of how peaceable probably this part of the Roman Empire was, certainly in the southeast of Britain. You're very close to the continent, you know, and the Romans, to my mind, always viewed what we now call the English Channel in a very different way to the way it's viewed today. So today, certainly with many in Britain, it's viewed as a barrier simply because of modern military history. But to the Romans, it wasn't. To the Romans, it was the ultimate place of connectivity. This is the place that links this northwestern province of the Roman Empire to the rest of the continental Roman Empire. So it's a vital connecting point. So I think that Roman Kent and the southeast actually was a very, very integrated part of the Roman Empire. So the Romans would have been very happy with people living their daily lives, provided, remember, you tip your hat to the imperial cult, you acknowledge the emperor, and you pay your taxes. Always remember, everybody, pay your taxes.
Thank you for this answer, Simon. The next one is Sean McKean asking, how much help did you get from the Ordnance Survey maps in locating the quarries?
They were absolutely vital without the ordnance. So firstly, just to tell any listeners who are interested, you can actually access this sequence of maps yourself for free in a zoomable form. So if you Google British Library, not museum, British Library Ordnance Survey, and then it will drop you onto a search field, and then you just type in where you live in Britain, and it will send you the links to the maps from 1780 through to 1797, which is when they were created. And they were very accurate because they were created by the British military in the context of the French Revolutionary later Napoleonic Wars. So the idea was for the military in the late 18th century to fully understand the geology and geography of southeastern Britain in the event of a French invasion. So they had to be very, very accurate. That's why they're so good for us today as historians, cartographers, and historians. So British Library, Ordnance Survey, type in where you are, and then you can zoom in and out on the maps as well. They're amazing and they're free, all free. And they were vital for me. Without them, I couldn't have found them at all.
Thank you for the answer. And the next question is Catherine Blenner Hassett, and she said, was marble using any of the Roman buildings in London? Where did it come from, if so?
So again, a fabulous question. Of course, marble was used across the elite built environment in Roman Britain, certainly in the southeast. So we have multiple examples in Roman London, and it's coming from everywhere you would source marble in the Mediterranean, largely in the Eastern Mediterranean. The best example I can give you, and I love your questions, they're terrific tonight, thank you so much. The best example I can give you, especially if you're able to travel there at some stage, go to Richborough on the east coast of Kent, which is a fabulous, fabulous Roman Saxon shore fort. But in actual fact, it's a time machine, because there's activity on this site from every phase of the Roman occupation, starting with Claudius's invasion. There are invasion ditches from his beachhead there. But in the late 1st century, Domitian built a monumental arch, which was to celebrate Agricola claiming he'd conquered the far north. And the monumental arch was clad in Carrara marble from Italy. And then when the Saxon shore fort was built, it was built because it was after the crisis of the 3rd century from recycled stone, including the marble. So if you want to go and touch a big chunk of Roman Carrara marble, you can go and do it today in the walls of the Saxon shore fort of Richborough Roman Fort.
Okay, thank you. As we don't have much time, I'm going to mix 2 questions from Liz Margaret and Campbell. So was ragstone used also for inscriptions, and was it used elsewhere in the Roman Empire during the occupation?
Great questions again. I really love your questions. So the first one is, interestingly, not so much. So you do get inscriptions in ragstone, but not very many, because actually it's a very hard wearable stone, which is why it's such a good building stone, but it doesn't tend to take an inscription very well. So if it does, it's not particularly good quality, certainly in the Roman period. And to your second question, the furthest afield it tends to be used is probably in modern Essex. So for our international audience, perhaps not familiar with Britain, that's to the north of Kent across the Thames estuary, and then maybe on the south coast as well. So basically it's used in the southeast of Britain. Intriguingly, with the Classis Britannica running the ragstone quarrying industry in the Medway Valley, Metalla, and the iron industry in the Weald on the south of Kent, in Metalla, they also manufactured tiles, which they stamped with a CLBR stamp. Tiles manufactured in southeastern Britain by the Navy are found in Gaul. So the furthest afield manufactured goods I can talk about from this region isn't actually the ragstone or the iron at all. It's tile, which finds its way into Gaul, near Boulogne.
Well, it's a very interesting question from Kinjiro Amano. Would you think that something similar can be found in other cities, for example, Manchester?
Oh, what a curveball. That's a great question. Let me think. Well, the first thing you need to do is find out what kind of stone was used to build. You know what I'll do? For historical research, I will go back to the very earliest Roman forts built in Manchester, and I would, Carlos, try and show off by saying which legion it was, but I can't remember, so I won't. Whichever legion it was, find out what stone was used in that original fort, and then source that stone to its nearest available site, and you can probably then track down where it was extracted from, because the holes don't go away. The holes are always there. You know what's really intriguing, actually, Carlos? It's a great question. It's really intriguing, that massive 2.6 kilometer long quarry, the Dean Street quarry, I argue is the biggest man-made hole in Roman Europe. The bottom third is today the municipal dump or tip where the rubbish is sent from modern Maidstone. So if you're throwing away your Coca-Cola can in central Kent today, it's finding its way into a Roman quarry.
All right. Well, thank you very much. That was very, very interesting again. I think we're going to go for the next lecture with Marco Vasile. And I'm sorry for the people who ask questions, but we don't have time anymore to answer them. But don't hesitate to message Simon if you want to ask your question to him. And I'll leave the floor to Angelo and Marco now.
Hello, everybody.
Hello.
I'm just going to introduce Marco. I'm just going to take a couple of minutes. Marco Vasile is graduated in physics and philosophy. His research field in philosophy regards the negation of logic and the philosophical thought of ancient people. His main interest is ancient Greece and its relationship with the Western modern civilization. He has written a number of scientific papers regarding the negation of logic and monuments of ancient Greece. He has been working at the Archaeological Park of Paestum for more than 10 years in the field of hospitality, communication, and didactic. I want to thank you, Marco, for being here. I want to thank the Archaeological Park of Paestum for accepting this invite. I want to thank also Maria Boffa, who I understand that she has been working with Mark on this presentation. I'm just going to hand over to you, Marco.
Hello, everybody. Thank you, Angelo, for your introduction. Yes, now we are Parco Archeologico di Paestum and Velia since February of last year. So we have incorporated also Velia, that is 40 kilometers south of Paestum. Yes, I'm very honored to be here tonight with you. Before starting my presentation, let me say that in such a critical period for all the museums and archaeological area and sites, this is an important occasion for us to preserve the contact with the public and cultural operators. So we in Paestum are very grateful with all the organizers of this beautiful event. And my presentation will focus mainly on the early phases of the Romanization of the city. That was an important step to the constitution of the Roman world in Campania region. Now I share my presentation. Okay. Do you see it? Yes. Yes. From time to time, I will introduce some videos we shot in Paestum. Some technical operations are required to me, so let's hope the gods of technology will help me. I will start by introducing the geographical location of the site, because in some way it contains all the historical destiny of the ancient city. Yes. This is Poseidonia Paestum. Here, a Greek colony was founded in 600 BC by Greek settlers, and the territory of Poseidonia went from the south, from Agropoli, probably Acropolis, probably this place played some role in the Greek foundation of the city, to the north, where there is the river Sele, Silaris in the ancient sources. So the geographical position of Paestum was very attractive and very strategic, because it is very close to the ocean, to the sea. It is protected by the mountain from north, and it is in a fertile land crossed by an important river. This is the beautiful air view of Paestum, where you can see the ancient walls. This is the most, I think, the best preserved ancient walls in Magna Grecia in Italy. You see the Temple of Athena here, the northern sanctuary, and the southern sanctuary here with the two temples, Temple of Neptune and Temple of Hera, the Basilica. In the middle, there was, in the Greek time, an enormous agora. Exactly here, the Romans created their own Roman Forum. And my presentation will focus mainly on this area, because a lot of very interesting political and also urban phenomena happened just here. This is an area view of Paestum. They are the two temples of the southern sanctuary, Temple of Neptune and Basilica. They are what you see here are all Roman remains of houses. The rectangular blocks, all the houses are arranged inside. What you see instead here, it's Agropoli, so the southern extremity of the territory, in some way controlled by Paestum. Now we pass to the ancient monuments of Paestum. They definitely are part of the European image, of the shared European image of antiquity, and they became very early in an European myth during the Grand Tour period. We will see something about this. Mostly, of course, the three Doric temples. This is the Temple of Neptune, the Basilica, Temple of Neptune from west, Temple of Neptune from southwest, the Basilica, Temple of Hera, the first stone temple built in Paestum, in the urban area of the city, the Basilica from west side. This is the beautiful Temple of Athena. It was built on an artificial little acropolis built by the Greeks, because Athena must be higher. She is the goddess of politics, strategy. This is a classical view of the Temple of Athena with the two pine trees and the mountains. Also, the ancient walls of Paestum are part of the shared European image of antiquity. This is the east door, ancient door, Porta Sirena. The station, the trains, the railway station is just here. So this is a wonderful path for the visitors to come from the station of Paestum to the archaeological site. This is a beautiful shot I took some days ago when the spring was at its best. This is the southern sector of the ancient walls of Paestum, and these kind of trees are the kings during the spring in Paestum. And of course, even if it was discovered later, last but not least, the world famous tomb of the diver that was discovered in 1968, and now is part of the imaginary of Paestum, and probably the most important attraction in our National Museum. This is the diver. Some words, but very few words, are due on the discovering of Paestum. That happened from a cultural point of view, of course, during the Grand Tour period. This is a beautiful plate in Thomas Major's book, one of the first edition of the Paestum temples, published in London in 1768. This is a wonderful, I think, probably my favorite engraving from Giovanni Battista Piranesi. He was in Paestum in 1777, and the year after he died because he was very sick. But he did 21 engravings that are really masterpiece. This is the internal space of the Temple of Neptune with buffaloes. One interesting thing is that Giovanni Battista Piranesi was a great supporter of the Roman supremacy in the architecture, but anyway, he visited Paestum and he left some wonderful memories. Well, the rediscovering of Paestum happened in the first half of 18th century in the context of the Grand Tour, when all the European nations was dramatically increasing their interest for antiquity. It is impossible to underestimate the importance of Paestum and its Doric monuments and ancient monuments in creating a shared European feeling of our ancient past. The rediscovering of Paestum was a common European cultural enterprise. We are very proud for this, even if some individual contributions can be distinguished. Yes, I want to remember some persons. So Felice Gazzola was a military officer of the King of Naples, Charles, together with Jacques Germain Soufflot, organized, that was an important architect, French architect, organized the first documented scientific expedition in Paestum in 1750. They collected some drawings of the temples that were published later, but we have some documents that some previous interest from British men is documented as well. A certain, if I remember right, Robert Smith in 1733 wrote some letters in which he tried to organize an expedition to Paestum, but it never happened. You know, that year was the year of the Società of Dilettanti, so an enormous interest of British men for antiquity. This is Joachim Winckelmann. He was the first to publish a scientific description of the Paestum temples in 1762. I know, you know, he is one of the most important art historians in Europe. And this is the great British architect John Soane. He was in Paestum when he was very young, 26, in 1779. And he did a lot of things about Paestum. If you visit his museum, the John Soane Museum in London, there is an incredible archive about all the drawings of the Grand Tour period about Paestum. But during his famous lectures about the origin of stone architecture, he was strongly inspired by the Temple of Neptune. This is a Temple of Neptune in wooden. You can recognize the internal colonnades. According to him and other architectural theorists of that period, circulating in that period. The original of architecture is connected with the wooden, and the temple, the Doric temples was the prototype in some way. Well, and the Romans, of course, yes, the Doric temples are definitely part of the collective image, our image of the European ancient past. But what modern archaeology brought to light, and what concretely visitors from Europe and all over the world experience in Paestum every day, are basically the remains of an ancient city that was deeply reshaped, and this is the target of my presentation, by the Romans, and remaining Roman up to the end of antiquity. The Romans created the conditions for the surviving of Paestum up to and beyond the end of antiquity. Now I want to see together with you very, very fast, of course, which was the background of the Roman Paestum, which kind of social and political situation the Romans met in Paestum when they founded the Latin colony of Paestum. Yes, the history of Paestum, anyone knows, can be traditionally scanned by three levels. Greek, Lucanian, Roman. The city was first Greek because it was founded by Greek settlers in 600 BC. The city was Lucanian later because the city was conquered by the Lucanians around 400 BC. The city was Roman because ancient sources like the Titus Livy and others say as a Latin colony was planted here in 273 BC by the Roman state, a little before the end of the wars against Pyrrhus. The wars against Pyrrhus, if I remember right, ended in 275. 2 years before, two Latin colonies were founded. One is that of Paestum, the other is that of Cosa in the northern region, in the central region of Italy. So our language speaks indifferently of a Greek Lucanian Roman period and of a Greek Lucanian Roman city, using the labels, so the labels Greek, Lucanian, Roman, both for the period and the city. But are these labels really able to grasp the historical reality? This is a problem. Actually, the political ruling class can change, but the aspect of the city can remain almost the same. And this is precisely the case of Paestum, because archaeology has shown us more and more during the last 40 years that the configuration of Paestum from a urban and from the organization of the public space in 273 BC was basically still Greek, because the Lucanians...
All right.
It's okay. The Lucanians didn't change the situation from the point of view of the organization of the city. So we cannot simply discard the three labels, but we can feel this problem. And there is a problem when we use indifferently for the period and for the city, the label of Greek rather than Lucanian or Roman. This is not an intellectual game, nothing to do with political correctness, etc. But this is simply the real voice of the past. Well, but who were the defeated? They were the Lucanians, this native population, an Italic population, defeated by the Romans during the wars against Pyrrhus. And now I will share a video with you. We will go into the storeroom. This is a magic place of Paestum Museum. And we have also opened it to the public, and we hope that it will be possible again in the future when the sanitary emergency will finish, we hope. So now I will share with you the video. Okay, enjoy it. Welcome to Paestum Museum storeroom. We are here because we want to have a look of the social background before the foundation of the Latin colony in 273 BC. This is really a magic and hidden place where we preserve an immense quantity of items and artifacts, all coming from the territory of Paestum. Among these, a special importance must be attached to the collection of painted slabs with fresco technique, coming from ancient tombs of 4th century BC. They are so important for us because they constitute the most probative archaeological document of the arrival here in Paestum of new people, the Lucanians, when the city was still under the political rule of its founders, the Greeks. We don't know how the political change between the Greeks and the Lucanians happened, nor do we know how deep the break with the Greek past was. But what we certainly know is that the break with the funerary customs of the Lucanians was very dramatic, because the Lucanians, differently from the Greeks, loved to be buried in very magnificent tombs with a lot of funerary gifts inside. Most part of the Lucanian tombs are composed of 4 slabs with a double-pitched roof. This is a wonderful example. This is a tomb discovered in 1969 in Andruolo, that is a place outside the ancient walls. And on this slab, we can see a fighting between a female panther and a griffon, the fantastic animal. Near the end of the Lucanian period, some monumental tombs, very different from this, like a real chamber, were built. And they testify for us the social environment that the foundation of the Latin colony met here in Paestum. And they document also which was the social condition in that period. And now we will see one of the most representative among them. We are inside one of the most beautiful and representative Lucanian tombs of the typology of the chamber tomb. Probably it was built very few years before the foundation of the Latin colony, probably the end of 4th century BC, 300 BC probably. And on this side, we can see an horseman, maybe the dead, symbolizing the dead, who is coming back to his woman after the war. On the other side, we see a nice little dog on the back of a horse. The decorations are provided basically by pomegranates that symbolizes the very positive meanings, like prosperity, abundance, fertility. On the front side, that plays the prominent role in all the pictorial composition, we see an adult man, a bearded man, who is welcoming a young by shaking his right hand. Probably this scene is happening in the afterlife. This situation, also the clothing of the aristocrats, the social environment, resembles a lot the Roman Società. And so all seems to say us something like the Romans were arriving, or Campania was already under the Romanization before the foundation of the Latin colony of Paestum. This would be a mistake, also because the conceptual model of Romanization is undergoing more and more critics by the scholars. Anyway, this is the social environment and the background that the Romans met here in Paestum when the foundation of the Latin colony happened.
Okay, I come back to the presentation. Well, now we go on. Well, so the foundation of the Latin colony. This is our subject. The ancient sources say us that 2 Latine colonie, Latin colonies, were planted, in 273 BC. Sorry, I've written in Italian. We have a beautiful statement from Titus Livius, even if, just this book, the 14th book of his histories went lost, but we have some summaries. Colonie deducte sunt Posidonia et Cosa. Cosa is the second Latin colony that was founded the same year. We don't have a detailed account about the foundation of the Latin colony of Paestum, neither of Cosa, but we can throw light by an analogy with other well-documented cases. So we have 3 questions to answer. Who were the colonists, how the colony was founded, and why? This is the most intriguing. Who were the colonists? So coloni missi. This is a statement from Valerius Paterculus, another Roman historian. Rome sent Latin settlers, who knows how much, but how many, but an hypothesis can be done. We will see later. But what is exactly the meaning of Latin? Why we say Latin colony, Latin settlers? Well, Latin means enjoying the Latin rights. So there was no Roman citizenship for them, but an independent political community, so a city-state of individuals with some rights, the use, that granted a privileged relationship with Rome, whose supreme political authority was in several ways recognized. It is called Latin because this was the kind of rights enjoyed by the first colonies founded by Rome in Latium, the region of Rome, centuries before the foundation of Paestum. And the pre-existing people, this is another very delicate subject. Well, the answer lies necessarily between two extremes: expulsion or incorporation into the Latin body, into the political body of the new Latin colony. Well, we have some archaeological evidences that this kind of answer can be in some way the right one, because we have some epigraphs with names of Lucanian people, with Lucanian names in their language. They spoke an Indo-European language, belonging to the Osco-Sabellic group. So we know the Latin language, and it's possible just to give some a foundation of this kind of answer. How the colony was founded, another very interesting subject. Well, the land was confiscated by the Roman state from the previous owners, so the Lucanians, we can say, and subdivided among the Latin colonists. The land was divided on the base of a grid of plots, of allotments, of parcels, each of which was assigned to an individual settler and his family. The territory of Paestum is about 3,000 hectares and 1 hectare for plot. Air photographs, sorry, I don't have with me. Air photographs taken by the Elliott in September 1943 revealed that 22 stripes of land divided in rectangular blocks. So this is not exactly a centuratio, that means a subdivision on the base of a square, but a division for per strigas, 4 stripes. And we have the demonstration is this. This is some drawings on the base of the air photographs I spoke before. We can count 22 stripes, and they are the divisions. Now they don't exist anymore because mechanical agricultural works have destroyed all these signs. But in 1943, they from an air view they appeared. But why the Colonia Latina was founded just in Paestum? This is the most intriguing question, as I said before. Did Rome want to permanently protect the territory fallen into her hands? Yes, this is a right answer, but we can go on. The foundation of the Latin colonies was generally speaking, part of a general strategy, that of the Romanization of Italy. And this is the problem in this concept, because this assumption has been for many years the standard doctrine due to Edward Salmon, the great British historian of Rome, but it is based on this conceptual model, on the model of the Romanization and of the Latin colonies as the real instrument of Romanization of Italy. This is a statement I took from the book of Salmon. But currently, the recent scholarship has deeply questioned this conceptual model, if not discarded, as an extreme simplification. So we cannot speak as Rome had in mind since the beginning, the Romanization of Italy, using the device of the foundation of Latin colonies. Well, this is finally a beautiful reconstruction of the ancient city in the Roman time. So we see the two sanctuaries. This is the forum, where I will focus my attention, and this is the amphitheater. The supreme urgency for the new political body, for the Latin colonists in Paestum, was to create their own political public space. They do this altering the configuration of the Greek agora, of the public Greek space, this one, because they cut all this part outside and they created the public and civil space, the forum, only in the southernmost sector of the original Greek agora. Now we will share a video about this. Must do a...
We are in the south.
Okay.
We are in the southwest corner of the Roman Forum of Paestum. As in every Roman town, the Forum was the center of the political, social, civil, commercial, and religious life of the citizens. It was created directly after the foundation of the Latin colony by the Romans in 273 BC, and it was surrounded by shops, tabernae, if we want to scan the letters of the diphthong, on the three free sides, and later in the term of the Emperor Augustus, by a surrounding portico with Doric columns. The creation of the Roman Forum had an enormous impact over the configuration of the public spaces here in Paestum, because it was created directly over the southernmost sector of the original Greek agora. That was an immense space that ran from north to south. So the Romans projected their own vision of the public space over the original Greek agora. A new epicenter of the social and political life was created, and the Greek agora lost more and more its importance, and the northern part of it was progressively filled with residential quarters, in a way that we are not yet completely able to detect. The creation of the Roman Forum here reflected the political urgencies and needs of the new social body as it was reshaped by the Romans when the Latin colony of Paestum was founded in 273 BC. On the sides of the Roman Forum, it is possible to see the signs of the political life and talent of the Romans. What you see here are the limestone blocks with the holes for supporting the poles to create the septa, the saepta. They were the precincts in which the political meetings of the Romans took place. The precincts were a sacred space. They were like a templum because the Romans had to separate the political space where the meetings happened from all the rest.
Okay, I come back to the presentation. Yes. So now we will visit the Roman Basilica, this building, this rectangular building at the center of the southern side of the Forum. The Basilica, as you know, in the Roman time, I mean, was a multifunctional building, often used as a meeting hall. Now we will have a tour inside. Okay.
Southern side of the Forum, we're passing in front of the shops, tabernae, that is Temple of Neptune, and now we will enter the Roman Basilica. The Roman basilica was reconstructed during the imperial age thanks to the financial help of a noblewoman of Paestum. And we see the columns incorporated in the walls of the structures and space in the walls to place the statues of the important persons of Paestum.
Okay, I come back to the presentation. Well, yes, now we will visit a very interesting place, the shops that were built by the Romans on the sides of the forum. This. We will go to visit a shop on the west side of the Roman forum, and I will enjoy the video with you.
We are at the end.
Okay.
We are at the end of the west side of the Roman Forum of Paestum. A little further, there is the Compitum, that is the crossing between the two main road axes. We are here to pay a visit to this taberna, to this shop. This is a marble object, a torculum in Latin, that is a press probably for oil, and it's still possible to see the spout and the channel. It's possible, it's highly probable that this was a shop whose main activity was the production of perfumes. This interpretation would be really consistent because Paestum in antiquity was very famous for the production of, for the cultivation of roses. Ancient Latin poets like Virgilius, Martial, Ovid speaks of the Paestan roses, Paestane rose, in their wonderful verses.
Okay, let's come back to the presentation. Okay. Yes, about the roses, the garden roses of the roses gardens of Paestum. This is the Temple of Neptune, the front east. Some years ago, we do a new plantation of roses. Of course, we don't know exactly if the botanic species is the same, but many ancient sources, poetic sources, spoke about Paestum. And this is some verses from Propertius. I read them in English. I have seen rose gardens of fragrant Paestum, gardens that would surpass all the others. Victura, lying desiccated under the early morning south wind, the Notus. Let's go on. Yes, now we will do together a walking towards the Compitum. Compitum was the crossing between the two main road axes, from that north-south and that east-west. It would not be correct to call them Cardus Maximus, this Cardus Maximus and Decumanus Maximus, because these levels, Cardus and Decumanus Maximi, refer only to urban grid created directly by the Romans. Instead, in this case, the urban grid was inherited from the Greeks by the Romans. So we will share the video. Okay.
We are walking on the south-north road axis towards north, and we are approaching the crossing point of the Compitum. This is the east of the city with the forum. This is the west, and this is the west road that connected the city to Porta Marina, one of the doors of the ancient city. And we are in the crossing point in the Compitum. And just here in the 30s, a statue of the satyr Marcia was founded by the archaeologists during very important excavations. This statue probably had a political meaning, like many other times in the history of art of the Romans, and it symbolized the libertas, the new political free condition of the Latin colonists who came here to found the new colony in 273 BC.
Okay, now we come back to the presentation. Well, this is the beautiful shot taken in Paestum, 27 March 1931, because just in this day, the statue of Marsyas was brought to light. This is the statue of Marsyas, the satyr. It is not a masterpiece of art, of course. It is divided in 5 pieces. But what is really interesting is the political meaning. Marsyas in the mythology is a satyr who still musical instruments, the double reed pipes, the auloi, from the god Apollo. But in the Roman culture, it had a political meaning, because if you see here, you can recognize the ring, but not the chains of slavery. This is the symbol of the new political freedom of the colonists of Paestum. So it symbolizes the libertas of the colonists. Now we go on. Now we will visit the center of the Roman power. The center of the Roman power is the Comitium. We see here three very important political monuments. The Comitium, where the political meetings for the election of magistrates took place, at least in the early Republican era. The Curia, that is the building for the meeting of the Senate of Paestum, and this temple I will speak about. Now I share the video.
The real heart of the Roman Forum was located at the center of the northern side of the structure. And here, 2 very important political buildings were built. We are in the Comitium, that is the place where the political meetings for the elections of the magistrates took place. The Comitium is constituted of a circular cavea within a rectangular building, and behind it there is the Curia, the second political structure here in the center of the forum, where the meetings of the Senate of Paestum took place. The Comitium was really important in the early phases of the Republican life, because later its main function, the Comitia Curiata, lost progressively importance. Beside the west side of the Comitium, a new temple was built around 200 years BC. So very few years after the Great War against Hannibal, in which Paestum remained loyal to the Roman state. Livius says us that thanks to the help of Paestum and other 17 colonies, Latin colonies, the Roman state was able to preserve its imperium. We still don't fully understand the relationship between the Comitium and this temple, but it's sure that this temple was the first large-sized sacred building built by the Romans here after the foundation of the Latin colony. The temple is elevated on a high podium, and we can still recognize the columns. It's a particular temple, typical of the Roman period, in which two different traditions were melting together. It mixed two different architectural styles, the Doric for the Doric frieze, and we still preserve in the museums a collection of several metops coming from this temple, and the Corinthian style for the capitals of the columns. The deity of the temple is supposed to be mens bona, a personification with a strong political meaning of moral qualities like moderation, good sense, and memory.
Okay, I come back to the presentation. Okay, this is the temple of Mens Bona, a beautiful view from southwest with the remaining columns. And now we will see a very short video about the metops, about the beautiful frieze belonging to this temple. The frieze now, I think 15 or 16 metops are in the gardens of the museum. We do an open air collection some months ago. Okay. I come back to my presentation. Okay, there are two wonderful statues of Livia, the wife of Emperor Augustus, and the Emperor Tiberius, but they are not in Paestum. They were founded in Paestum. They were brought to light in Paestum in 1860 around, but currently are in the Archaeological National Museum of Madrid. Probably we don't know exactly from where they came, or inside the city or some Roman villa outside. Well, now we will visit one of the most famous Roman building, the amphitheater. There is no Roman town without an amphitheater. It has been said, but it is not always true. And so now I will share with you the video. Of course, the amphitheater currently dominates the Roman landscape of Paestum. Is one of the most peculiar Roman element of the ancient landscape of the city.
The Caesarean era.
Okay.
In the Caesarean era, so 1 century BC, an amphitheater was built in Paestum, where the spectacular took place. Now the amphitheater of Paestum is one of the most peculiar elements of the Roman landscape of the archaeological site. It is supposed that it was constructed in two different phases, and later the upper part, probably in wooden, in ligneiss, was added. The 1/3 of the amphitheater is currently under the level of the National Road, and we hope one day it will be possible to bring it to light.
Okay, I come back to my presentation. And this is. So now, but where exactly the Romans, where they live during the Roman period? They live, I said you before, because all the Roman houses are arranged in these rectangular blocks that in some way reproduces the Greek urban grid. Now we will visit one of the most beautiful Roman house, Domus in Paestum, with a wonderful marble impluvium. I share the video.
The houses in the
Must do the operation. Okay.
The houses in the Roman period were arranged in rectangular blocks that basically respected the Greek urban grid. The layout of the houses was that typical of the Roman period, so well implemented in Pompeii. And now we are in the so-called house domus of the impluvium. We are in the atrium, and we can see a magnificent and very beautiful marble impluvium to collect the raining water. We are in the peristelium of the marble impluvium house, and we can see all the columns around, the brick columns typical of the Roman period, with all the rooms on the sides. And in particular, one room is very beautiful because of its mosaics with flowers and geometric patterns.
Come back to my presentation. Yes, but what about the new gods? The new gods of Paestum. Of course, the Roman pantheon of gods is quite similar to the Greek one because it was strongly influenced by it. The Romans didn't alter so much the religious landscape of Paestum. They left almost untouched this area, we will see, but in this area we are just on the southern side of the forum. So when exactly where the southern sanctuary finish, it touched the border of the forum. Just here, something of interesting happened, and I will show you the video.
As we know,
okay.
As we know, the Roman pantheon of gods was quite similar to the Greek one, by which it was strongly influenced during the centuries. Anyway, in antiquity, we know that often new people means a new cult, new religious cults. And this is true also here in Paestum, because the new Latin colonists brought with them new cults. For example, we have a very important structure, the so-called Italic temple. This is one of the first temples built by the new colonists, Latin colonists here in Paestum. It is north-south oriented, differently from the Greek temples that usually are east-west oriented. And it is supposed to be dedicated to Mater Matuta. Mater Matuta was the deity, the goddess of the dawn and the morning light, connected also with childbirth. And from the deposits from this temple, many votives come, representing babes, pregnant women, and also anatomical parts like eyes, wombs, and other parts.
Okay, now I come back to my presentation. Well, what we saw before is exactly this structure, the Italic temple with the north-south orientation, while the Greek temples usually, not always, but really a lot of them are east-west oriented. This is a typical orientation of the Italic people. This is the objects, the items from the deposit of the temple from the Italic temple, probably dedicated to Mater Matuta. I went into the storeroom to do these shots, to take these pictures. There are some very beautiful little terracotta figurines of Mater Matuta, probably anyway connected to the spare of the women. They are little heads of kids, of babes, and they are wombs. There are also other anatomical parts like eyes, etc. Go on. Yes, now we will go into we will visit the most important sanctuary of Paestum, the southern sanctuary, where the Temple of Neptune and the Basilica are located. What about the ancient Greek god of Paestum? Of course, the Romans respected them. They continued to use the temples. They also restored them. But in this area, just in this crucial point, the altar that was the kernel, as we know, of the religious rituals of the ancients, the Romans changed something. I will show you. Okay.
We are in front of the Temple of Neptune, the most impressive and most famous monument of Paestum. It was built by the Greeks around 460 BC in Doric style, and it's really a majestic sacred building. But the name Temple of Neptune is conventional. We still don't know which was the deity the temple was dedicated to. Who knows? Hera, Zeus, Apollo, there are still researches about. The religious landscape of Paestum didn't change very much in the Roman period because the pantheon of the gods was quite similar. Anyway, the Romans continued to use the Temple of Neptune, and there are also signs that they restored it, but they didn't leave this area unaltered. In fact, they destroyed the ancient Greek altar of the Temple of Neptune, and they replaced it with a new altar, smaller and closer to the building. And from this shape, this molding, the cima reversa, it's possible to give a datation, probably 1st century BC. But we are here to have a wonderful experience, because now we will enter the Temple of Neptune, and we will go inside the cella. It's more sacred and intimate space where the statue, the cult image of the unknown god or goddess was housed and worshipped. A great respect will be required.
Okay, now come back to the presentation. Well, I'm finishing. This is the most exciting experience in Paestum. We hope that in the future it will be again possible when the sanitary emergencies will finish. This is a cross section in the reconstruction of the temple of Neptune. We will enter the site. This is the representation of a ritual, of a procession of the animals to the sacrifices on the Roman altar. Keep in mind that the reconstruction of the statue of the god, of the goddess in this case, is purely hypothetical, because we don't know if it was Hera. They have supposedly Hera here, but I said you before, it's possible also Zeus or Apollo. It's still an enigma. Now I share the video. It's the last one. Okay.
We are in the pronaos of the Temple of Neptune, and our intention is to pay a very respectful visit to the god of the temple that also the Romans worshipped during the Latin colony period. We do these steps, and now we are on the platform of the cella. If we count the number of blocks that compose the stripes of the platform, we recognize always 3 elements. 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3. But when we reach the fifth column of the internal space of the temple, something changed, because the number now is 2. This is the sign that this was the delimitation of the most sacred and intimate space. And it's highly probable that the statue of the unknown god was placed something like here, in this place. Probably the statue was here in the center of the end part of the cella, and her or his view was towards the altar for the sacrifices during the great festivals of the city.
I come back to my presentation. This was the last video clip. Well, yes, exactly. This is a wonderful view of the Temple of Neptune from the top. It was an enormous excitation for me to go there 3 years ago when they were cleaning the temples from the grass. You can still recognize here. This is the internal space of the temple with the double orders of columns. Now we go on. This is my last slide. Well, this is the Temple of Neptune towards the mountain. Who knows? My hypothesis is that it is exactly oriented here. This is another subject. But I'm sorry. I want to read you this. Not able to read because of this statement from the great British scholar of John Davison Beazley, a scholar of Oxford. He was devoted to the study, as we know, and the classification of the ancient pottery makers, ancient pottery painters. But I think this statement is still valid. I think that this is this is what exactly antiquity can still teach us. The man and his style during the time as a sacred thing. And I want to finish so my presentation. Thank you for your interest.
Thank you very much, Marco, for this amazing presentation. And I think it gave some ideas to everyone for a future touristic journey in Paestum, once the frontiers will be reopened, of course. So you have a lot of messages for you from people that have visited Paestum or that are thanking you. But we have a little bit of time for some questions. Catherine is asking, why was Paestum abandoned and why?
Yes, Paestum was abandoned probably in the late, until about the end of antiquity. After the end of antiquity, late antiquity, 6th, 7th century after Christ. The reason is some also changement of the territory, because Paestum was changed into an enormous swamp. So water everywhere. So the people was forced to finally to leave the site and to build a new city over the mountains. This is Capaccio. It's possible to see from the temples towards east. And another element that played a role in this event was probably also the attacks from the Arabs. The Arabs were in Agropoli, where 10 kilometers south of Paestum, they had a military establishment there.
Thanks, Marco. It was a really nice lecture about Paestum. And Stefano Forcoli asked, where was Cosa?
Yes, Cosa is another Latin colony built in the central region of Italy in the same year. So 273 BC, Rome founded 2 Latin colonies. In that case, in the case of Cosa, the war was against the Etruscans. So they defeated the Etruscans and they founded the Latin colony of Cosa to protect that part of the territory. They defeated the Lucanians and they founded another Latin colony in the same year in Paestum. The difference is very interesting because differently from Cosa, Paestum was already a city. Was a Greek city. Instead, Cosa was built from nothing.
Okay, thank you very much, Marco, for this. And we have a question from Pablo, who is asking how the transition between the Greek, Lucanian, and Roman moments of the city, and did this cultural crossroad influence architecture, art, etc.?
Yes, as I said, we have some important archaeological evidences that the urban aspect, the urban configuration and architectural configuration of Paestum didn't change with the Lucanian conquest. So also the urban grid, the enormous agora. Think that the agora of Paestum was 10 hectares, so an enormous space between the two sanctuaries. The Lucanians didn't touch them. The changement happened with the Romans. Also the temples were used by the Lucanians, also by the Romans. The Lucanians are quite invisible from an archaeological point of view. You don't see them in the city. You must know where to find them. They are not so visible.
Well, we have one last question in the chat from Domenico. And he said, if the excavation of the area, some traces of Samnite settlement have been found in the layers, like in the site of Cumae, as the horses frescoes in one of the tombs showed have a lot of affinities with the famous Samnite tomb of Nola.
Yes, this is a very important question. And this is the problem. This is a conceptual problem, because if you use the conceptual model of Romanization, you could explain all. You could say in that period there was a Romanization, so all the cultural elements are quite similar. This is not the right answer. Anyway, of course, there is some connection between the Lucanians and the Samnites. The Samnites conquered several Greek colonies also in that area, and Cuma was one of the first. Cuma probably was conquered by them in 420, so 20 years before the Lucanian conquest of Paestum. But when I say Lucanian conquest, it's a problem, because we can say this only because of the funeral artifacts, as I said you before. That is the break between the Greeks and the Lucanians, the tombs. Great question.
More questions?
Not at the moment. Not
Not
at the moment.
No, I just saw that there are a lot of appreciation for the presentation. So everybody will go to Paestum as soon as possible.
Yes, I'm there.
Me too. And I'm ashamed, because being Italian, I've never been there. But next time I go, I will make sure to come to visit you, really.
Yes, Paestum and Velia also. Velia is the place where Parmenides and Zeno founded philosophical Western thought. So Paestum, Velia. I do a bit of propaganda for my site.
We have to make sure. Anyway, what can I say? Two beautiful presentation. I thank you so much, really, the two speakers. And is not finished, because I thank you everybody who attended this evening. It has been a long evening, but I think that it was worth it. So on behalf of the Instituto Cervantes, the Alianza Française, and the Società Dante Alighieri, I have to thank you all and to remind you that we have to meet next week on Wednesday, just to discover other Roman towns in Spain and in France. So don't forget, and I hope that you will be all there.
I'm just
Buonanotte e grazie.
I'm going to put a link for next week event in a minute in the chat. So you can already book your tickets for the event. And we hope to see you next week as well.
Yes. See you.